The title of this podcast is Don't Be an Old Person Before You Realize the Nonsense You've Been Up to. When I reflect back on my journey over the last 8.5 years and how much the practice has really helped me become a better version of myself, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but better than I would be had I been left to my own devices of trying to control things, manipulate this situation, resisting the reality in front of me, judging other people, needing them to be different so that I'm okay, running from one situation, whether it be a job or whether it be a relationship, so that I can be happy, needing the outside world to be a certain way for me to be okay inside. If I had continued along that path, I would literally be an old person, become an old person, up to nothing but nonsense. But fortunately, that hasn't happened. And I think about, like, man, thank God I got the practice at age 44, like age 45. Like, thank God I did. And some people be like, how did you wait that long to get it? I could have been 54, 64, 74, uh, before I got it or not get it at all. So I am so grateful that when I got it, I got it. Now, the title of this topic of Don't Be an Old Person Before You Realize the Nonsense You've Been Up to came from Diane Carroll. So I'm an older guy. I'm 53 years old. So Diane Carroll had a television show on called Julia. And I started watching it as a kid. It was really a little bit before my time, but I started watching it because she was just this beautiful, incredible personality on television. And the content was light, but it was still meaningful and relevant for the time. And she was really like dictating her career. Like she was kind of like charting the course that it was going to take. And being an African American woman on television back at that time, with such a positive character portrayal, it was noteworthy. Like it was kind of a big deal. And so I remember her, but she did this podcast episode with Oprah Winfrey in her masterclass. So just if you want to look at it, search podcast Oprah Winfrey masterclass, and it's a very good show. And she talks about the many times she's been married. And she married or got into a lot of relationships for fear of being alone. She never admitted it. But every relationship she went into, it was to like get attached and have this kind of relationship, and have a relationship and one that was deeply committed. But she would inevitably ruin those relationships because she brought herself to those relationships of someone who was not whole and complete, because she needed someone else to be whole and complete. She needed something on the outside, but no one can do that for you. It's impossible. You have to do it on your own. And there's really nothing to do except let go of your lower self that is telling you that you're not enough for whatever reason, the way you look, the way, how much money you have, whether or not you have enough alphabet soup behind your name, with your degrees and certifications, or how much, whatever the case is telling you that you're not enough, but none of that's true. And so, but she talked about this, and she, at the core of it was she was afraid to be alone. And she became an old lady before she realized that. So I think about the nonsense that I was engaged in that was going to take me to becoming an old man before I realized it, if at all. And part of that nonsense included always being right. I had to be right about everything. I had a very structured life, but the way that my life, the structure was set up is that it was limited. And what made it limiting was that I did not consider that there was a different way of seeing the world, experiencing the world. Whenever someone suggested something to me, there was an internal no to it, or that I know better, or so and so knows better than what you're suggesting. There was that. There's incredible judgment. I mean, if a particular group of people did something, I painted everyone with a broad brush and let no one in. My limitations actually became barriers to love, to kindness, to me, receiving compassion, extending compassion unconditionally. It became all of those things because I was involved in nonsense. I was trying to control every situation, needing everyone to be a certain way, needing life to be a certain way for me to be okay. I mean, what kind of person at 18 goes off to the military and is stationed in a city that was not to their choosing, who can't accept that this is where I am now? You're in Yuma, Arizona. Like, accept it, make the most of it. But instead, I complained every single day of those 4 years, not seeing the good in any of it. What kind of person does that? That is called being up to nonsense. Needing your significant other to be a certain way, to say certain things for you to be okay, is being caught up in nonsense. No one else is doing this to you. You're doing this to yourself. And before you know it, you become an old lady. I talked to a lot of friends, and I was kind of on this course myself with my brother, but I talked to friends who have family members, whether it's a mother or father, and they see them. It's like, man, look at what they're doing with their lives. All they do is this behavior, complaining, or they're shouting, or putting out their views. It didn't even occur to them that someone else has a different way of seeing the world or seeing a situation. And they become this old person who's grumpy and judgmental. And I'm like, look in the mirror. Like, this is where you're headed with the nonsense that you're open to. Now, it may not be yelling about political things or yelling about societies going down the tubes or being upset that that somebody has, is going 1 minute over on your pickleball court reservation. It may not be that, but it may be something else. It could maybe an obsession with your children, an obsession with what people at work are doing or not doing. It could be any of those things, but before you know it, all those moments that you are casually throwing away, not being in the present moment because you want it to be different, not accepting reality of the situation as it is, not seeing that there's incredible beauty and goodness, and even in this moment that looks challenging on the surface, that there is an opportunity for growth. Not seeing any of that is being caught up in nonsense. And so I'm telling you what I would want somebody to tell me, and I'm sure many people did. What are you doing with your life? Before you know it, you're going to become an old person. And this behavior that you're engaged in now, that you may be unconscious to, so I'm bringing it to your attention, it's going to become the story of your life. Is that what you want for your life? It's not. When I see a person, especially if they're older, who are kind, who are peaceful, every time you're around them, they have no complaint. And you can look at their life and be like, if there was a person who had a right to complain, this is the person. And even with that, they don't do it. Man, when you meet that kind of person, man, ask them, like, what are they doing to be this way? Ask them about all the things that have happened in their lives where they were aware that they had a choice to live life a different way. And they're not wasting those moments. Fretting over what your children are doing when they're older, or even fretting when they're younger. That's not to say that you don't guide them. You do. But you do it without all the nonsense that oftentimes people bring with them in their parenting. And relationship, just being so fixated about what your significant other is doing or isn't doing, or making these sarcastic, passive aggressive statements, whatever the case may be, withholding love and affection as a way of making them pay. Stop it. Don't be caught up in any of that nonsense. Like, do not become an old person before you realize the nonsense that you've been up to. Don't keep going to work day after day, complaining about your job, wishing that you were somewhere else. That's called nonsense. This is where you are. Make the most of it. Use it as an opportunity. Use it as a way for you to become a person who's fulfilled, full of love, joy, and gratitude in every situation.